So welcome everybody to the Net Laws Vanishing Vaquita Porpoise. We're delighted to have you join us as we learn about the plight of the vaquita. I am Martha Shalhu, Professor of Mathematics at the Preston Ridge campus and advisor to the Collin Association for Sustainable Efforts, or CASE for short. So who in the audience had heard of the vaquita marina prior to this event? Raise your hand. Okay. When psychology professor Jennifer Laughlin Brooks, that was just here, first approached me to co-sponsor the event, I confess I had not heard of the vaquita marina. And I felt terrible, being that I'm a native of Mexico and that all of my volunteer efforts revolve around the environment. But then as I started approaching others about the subject, I realized I was not alone. Very few people know about the vaquita or care enough to do something about it. And that is precisely why we hold events such as this, to learn and to raise awareness about our world, to raise awareness, to heighten consciousness, to elevate understanding. Jennifer and I are very excited about our featured speaker, senior marine scientist Emmy Whitt. So I will let her tell you about the vaquita, why it is endangered, and the massive efforts currently underway to save it from extinction. But I wanted to remark on the fact that none of these efforts would mean anything if there is no hope. Hope is what drives us to care. Hope does not permit us to give up. Hope fuels our strength. A colleague of mine always says, think globally, act locally. Enter our community partners back there. And we don't take that word lightly, partners, showing support and solidarity for our efforts. We have invited you here as partners in conservation to provide us with information and opportunities to get involved in our community. Whether it is hiking with the Dallas Sierra Club, spending time in nature to nurture our love for our surroundings, or spending a peaceful morning bird watching at the Connemara Meadow with a master naturalist, or engage in political action to advocate for clean solar energy in our communities, or volunteer to clean our creeks and parks, or grow organic produce for our food banks, we're doing something that will ultimately impact us all, because we're all connected, and our actions matter. I invite you to get involved. I invite you to clean up after yourselves and leave the place better than you found it. I invite you to care for our most precious resources, water, air, and soil. I invite you to participate in the domino effect of caregiving. I invite you to reflect on creative ways that you too can walk the talk. Because friends, a bunch of nothing is nothing, but a bunch of a little is a lot. Find your little. An event such as this can only take place with the collaboration of various interested parties. We're lucky to have had the support of the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, the Honors Institute, Psi Beta Psychology Honor Society, and the Collin Association for Sustainable Efforts, CASE. Jennifer worked closely with Ms. Karen Knapp and Media Services to secure the location and technology for this event. We're fortunate to have the support of our administration, in particular Springfield Campus VP Provost Mary McRae, Dean Cameron Neal, Associate Dean Craig Leverett, and Administrative Assistant Jayanna Mann. We would like to extend a great big thank you to all the professors who encourage their students to submit their artwork. Please join me in thanking our community partners, student organizations here present, our administration, and everyone involved in making this event a reality. So a few announcements before leaving you with Professor Laughlin Brooks, the mastermind of this event. Please silence your cell phones. Please recycle your cups or compost your napkins and popcorn trays in the back. And we'll be taking a 15-minute break, at which time you can visit the community partners, sign the petition, admire the Collin students' art pieces, and perhaps take one home in exchange for a donation to the Vaquita Recovery Fund. There are pondering questions at your tables that you may have already been thinking about. Please feel free to take a picture of these questions and email your responses directly to me if you would like to continue the conversation beyond tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. We're the 15-minute break, 10 minutes, depending on what time we have left, is going to be after Amy speaks. So you guys will be able to get food and whatnot, and then we're going to show the movie, the film screening of from Wild Lens. You guys will be interested in that. So let me introduce Amy Whitt. Amy is a senior marine scientist with over 13 years of professional experience in marine mammal research, conservation, and management. Her work focuses on minimizing human impacts to marine species and populations. She specializes in integrating science and policy to solve environmental issues and has conducted a variety of projects around the world, from studying whales and dolphins off South America to assessing the occurrence of marine mammals in the Mediterranean Sea. She earned her Master's of Environmental Management degree in Coastal Environmental Management from Duke University and her Bachelor of Science degree in Biology from Collin College. She is the founder and CEO of Azura Consulting, an environmental consulting firm offering a variety of services, including natural resource management, professional writing and editing, and educational outreach. Whitt is also an associate professor of environmental science here at Collin College. We're so happy to have her. She's also a professional editor for American Journal Experts, serves on the editorial board of Right Whale News, and is a technical reviewer for the Journals of Aquatic Mammals and Marine Mammal Science. She just returned, I have to mention, she just returned from Nova Scotia last week, where she attended the Society for Marine Mammal Mammalogy Conference. So welcome, Amy Whitt.
One second. It's loading. We just had it up too. It's like sitting here. Bring over the expert. It's just loading. It's just sitting here and spinning. I know. We just had it up too. It's thinking. Oh, yeah. So Jennifer did a very nice introduction. Thank you so much. I am based in Plano, so this has been my home now for about 13 years. I first came here after graduate school. I got my first job in Plano working for an environmental consulting company called Geomarine, and then I decided to stay and start my own environmental consulting company. And then I've been involved in Collin College since January of this year, and it's been a great experience. Yay, and it's up. Great timing. Thank you so much for coming. I'm honored to be here to talk about the vaquita. A lot of my colleagues are the experts on the vaquita, and they've been studying them for many years. So I'm here kind of on behalf of them to talk to you all about this incredible species. So what is a vaquita? It is actually a porpoise. You may not have heard of many porpoises. We usually hear about dolphins. You can kind of think of the porpoise as like a cousin to the dolphins. That's the easiest way to think of it. The vaquita goes by lots of different names besides vaquita, which means little cow in Spanish. It's also called the Gulf of California porpoise because of where it lives. The desert porpoise because it lives close to one of the hottest deserts in the world. The ghost porpoise, because it is very good at hiding from people. It can be seen in a second and then disappear under the water and be gone. Panda of the sea is another popular name for it, mainly because, as you can see here, it has a nice little black outline around their eyes. So they're very cute, as you can see, but in the wild, we don't get to see all of this. You pretty much just see this top portion here where the dorsal fin is. We don't get to see the rest of it because it's underwater. They're about 5 feet long, so that's about my height. They also weigh about 100 pounds, so they're quite small, which is unique, particularly for this area. Porpoises mostly live in colder water climates, but this species, as I'll show you a map here in a minute, lives in very warm water. The lifespan we think is about 20 to 21 years, but yet there's still a lot we don't know about the species. And the females, they're sexually dimorphic, so the females are actually larger than the males. They travel in very small groups, which also makes it really difficult to find them. They're typically in groups of just 1, 2, maybe 3 individuals. Groups as large as about 10 have been sighted before, but it's really, really rare. They also do not do that aerial behavior that we're used to seeing with dolphins, where they leap out of the water and spin. This species doesn't seem to do that. So they really just barely surface and then they go back under the water. They also don't tend to approach vessels to do any bow riding or wake riding like you might see, particularly if you've been to Florida or done any dolphin watching there. The dolphins will come straight to the boat. These porpoises do not do that. This is where they live. This is the Gulf of California. This red box is where they're concentrated. So they could be throughout this whole part of the Gulf, but they focus just right here at the end of the Colorado River. It flows right there. So United States is up here. So they are a Mexican species. They are completely endemic to this small range right here. The core area is only about 700 square miles. That tends to be just where they like to hang out, probably because that's where their prey is. This area is only 4.5 hours drive from San Diego. So a lot of the researchers who have been studying the vaquita are actually from the NOAA lab in San Diego. Like I said, the Colorado River is right here and it flows out. So this is the Colorado River estuary. It's actually a very highly productive area. So there's plenty of food for the vaquita. This gives you an example of where we are right now and where the vaquita live. So it kind of gives you a straight shot over to the northern Gulf of California. Now, the vaquita is the rarest and most endangered marine mammal species in the world. It is critically endangered. We believe there are fewer than 30 left. This chart right here gives you an idea of how the population has declined. Now, it's only been discovered since the 1950s, but the first actual survey to count the vaquita didn't happen until 1997. So we're really behind the game here with this one. And that abundance estimate was around 600 animals. And then the next survey was in 2008. You can see it dwindled down. 2015, even more so. And then the last estimate from 2016. So the whole decrease is a problem, 95% decline. But what's really concerning is the last couple of years, it was a 50% decline. Because of that, we estimate in 2017, right now, there's 50% of 30, which means there's only probably 15 vaquita left. So I'll give you a little background here on how we get those counts, how we get those abundance estimates. So we use visual monitoring and passive acoustic monitoring. The visual monitoring occurs on really, really large ships using these really, really big binoculars. We call these big eyes. So the observers can actually see out for miles from the ship in search of vaquita. They need to be able to see as far as they can because the ship can only cover so much area in a certain period of time. So they really need to maximize their visibility. And here I'm going to play you, I'll get it running here, the time-lapse video that the observers did in the 2015 survey, and these are all my friends on this survey. You can see there's several different sets of big eyes, and they just go back and forth scanning the water, and the observers rotate through these stations. And then this person right here is the central recorder, okay? She's recording all the sightings and all the information that the observers tell her. If you're curious on what the observers actually see, I get this to play, there we go. This is gonna be a short, I'm just gonna show a little bit of this video, also from 2015, of what it's like to actually see a vaquita. There they went, that's it. That's all you see. And this is really calm weather, okay? This is rare in this area. This is like really, really good weather, but that's all you see. She's gonna slow it down for us. So there's 1 fin, 2 fins, 3 fins. So a group of 3 surfacing, and then they're gone. Now they may surface a couple of times, but they're really good and known for surfacing once or twice, and then they're gone. And you can't see them at all out here, no matter how big of binoculars you use. So it's, that's how difficult it is to study them, to even see them. Okay. So from the 2015 survey, that was the last large ship survey that they conducted. These lines right here, this is the path of the ship. Okay, so this area is the main area where we think the vaquita mostly are based on other surveys. And these little dots are the actual sightings that they had. So they covered over 900 nautical miles of track line, but only had 28 vaquita sightings. Now I'm going to show you, this was more concentrated track line in that core area where we think the vaquita like to hang out the most. And again, you can see the little dots of the sightings. Most of the sightings are in that little area. So they take these data and then they do some modeling and they come up with an abundance estimate. So from this survey, the abundance was 59 individuals. So the other thing that we do to count and try to get abundance estimates of vaquita is using acoustics, underwater acoustics. So they do it 2 different ways. They use a towed hydrophone array. All that means is a hydrophone is just an underwater microphone. So if you go out on a ship, you can put an array in the water that has several different of these underwater microphones, and you just tow it behind the ship. And then you have a cable that runs all those data into a lab, and you have actual acousticians on a computer with headphones, and they're looking at spectrograms and listening for vaquita. Vaquita make a very specific sound, which I'll show you in a minute. So in real time, researchers can listen as they're surveying on a ship. They can listen and listen for the vaquita. So that happens maybe during ship surveys, but ship surveys are very expensive. Okay, they take a large ship and a lot of people to run. So they're millions of dollars. So a cheaper way to collect data is using these sea pods. That's what they're called. This is a picture of one. It's just like a plastic tube, and inside you have the electronic components and the batteries and the hydrophone. And so what the researchers do is deploy these into the water and leave them there. And they come back later, pick them up, and download the data, and then analyze the data. So these have been deployed in the vaquita habitat every summer since 2011. They deploy around 48 in the actual habitat and then several around the perimeter. And I know they've upped that number, I believe in 2016, so they actually had more sea pods deployed. And I'm going to show you here a video of the researchers deploying the sea pod. So here we go. There's the sea pod, that plastic part. He drops the anchor so it'll take it all the way down to the bottom of the sea floor. And then he releases the sea pod, and then he's going to release a buoy, and then this mooring here with the flag. So this will stay out of the water so they know where the sea pod is. But the pod itself will actually be on the bottom of the sea floor. So vaquita make very good clicks. It's their echolocation. You may have heard of that. They send out a click, it bounces off an object and echoes and comes back, and they're able to analyze that echo to know what's around them, what's in their environment. They do that to find prey and to talk to each other as well. So this is a spectrogram. It's just a picture of sound. That's all it is. Each of these little lines is a click. So I'm going to play this for you. So it's going to be just a few clicks, and then it's going to be a bunch of clicks together. We call that a click train. Let's see. Oops. I'll try to turn it up pretty loud because it's kind of quiet. That was it. That was the click train. That was it. But it's very distinct. Get back to the presentation here. It is very distinct, and the acousticians can actually use those clicks to determine the number of animals making the sound. So they can do some modeling and come up with an abundance estimate just using the sound. And we compare those because sometimes we'll do the visual survey and the acoustics at the same time and then compare the results. And the results are always very, very close, which is great. So here's an example. Each dot is a sea pod that was deployed. Now seems like a really weird shape, but this is the core area where the vaquita live. So you can see how the sea pods are scattered throughout the area from 2011 to 2016. Now what I want you to look at, the yellow means more clicks, okay? Now right here, 2011 and 12, there's a lot of clicks in the same area, and then it's less and less and less and really less. So this was alarming to the researchers because based on where the other sea pods were and visual surveys, we don't think the vaquita are moving out of this area. We think that the numbers are just dwindling, so there's less vaquita there to make the clicks. Now the most recent, like we said, the most recent abundance estimate we had as of 2016 was just 30 vaquita, and that was based on the 2015 surveys. But in 2017, in the spring, they went back, and these are the locations where they usually have the sea pods. Well, they came back, and they really wanted to focus on that target area. So these red ones, they deployed sea pods there for 2 months, and they only had 2 vaquita detections, which is really not good news. A lot less than what they were hoping for based on previous studies. So based on that, and the previous year, we had a 50% decline. So if we take the 30 vaquita from 2016 and assume a 50% decline again, then there's only 15 left right now. And that's what the researchers believe. They think there's actually probably less than 15 left. So what is killing the vaquita? Scientists have looked at a lot of different possibilities, anything from inbreeding depression, since it is such a small population, to pollutants, particularly from the Colorado River. And what they found is these are the cleanest animals, marine mammals, I think they have ever tested. They tested their tissue and found really no evidence of contamination, and their genetics also seem really strong. So they've ruled out those possibilities. So really it just comes down to gill nets. Gill nets. This is how the vaquita was first discovered, because it washed up in a gill net. It wasn't seen at sea. It was seen dead on shore, wrapped in a gill net. Now, for example, Jennifer was really nice to actually get us a gill net. So come up here during your break and feel of it. Try to rip it apart. You won't be able to do it. So you can see how hard it is to get out of that once they're captured. And gill nets are just dropped into the water, okay? They're in the water column. So they'll catch anything that is trying to swim through it. That's why they're called the invisible killer, because you really can't see them. And even though these vaquita are able to use their echolocation to detect things, the echolocation is not quite precise enough to detect the gill nets. Otherwise, they would never get caught in them. But what we found was that hundreds of vaquita have died in the gill nets just since we've been documenting it in 1997. So we've gone from about 600 vaquita to less than 30, more likely 15. Now, vaquita get caught in any gill net, but they particularly get caught in the gill nets that are set for this fish. This is a totoaba. It is also critically endangered species. It is also only found in the Gulf of California. It's similar to the size of the vaquita. Here's a vaquita. This is actually a small totoaba. They get bigger than this. I said the vaquita is about 5 feet. The totoaba gets to about 6 feet, 200 pounds. And the main reason fishermen want these is not for the meat. They don't eat the meat. They just want this part right here. This is the fish's swim bladder. That's the part of the fish that controls the buoyancy. Because the totoaba is a massive fish, guess what? The swim bladder is massive. Now, what do people do with that, you may think? Well, the Chinese think it holds medicinal properties, and it's used in soups. They're supposed to drink the soup, and they'll be healthy, and it's also supposed to make them more youthful because of the collagen that's in the swim bladder. It's supposed to be good for your skin. So there is a huge market for these swim bladders, but it is a black market. Because the totoaba is critically endangered, it is illegal to fish them anywhere in the world, but they only exist here. So it's illegal for these fishermen to catch the totoaba at all, much less just to take the swim bladder. So what's the main drive? Well, this swim bladder is known as aquatic cocaine because fishermen can get as much money from the swim bladder as they can from selling cocaine. This one bladder can get them anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000, and that's just one fish. So you can see in this area of Mexico where the main job is fishing, is the poorer area, it's really hard to tell them not to kill this and earn all the money, more money than they probably make in a year. So that is the big drive, this black market for these swim bladders. So the Mexicans here are getting the swim bladders, and then they smuggle them, usually they get to China via the US. So what's been done about the gill nets? So back in 1993, Mexico made this biosphere reserve. So if you look at this dotted line here, the reserve is everything north of it. It's this whole section right here. Now these diagonal lines, that's the vaquita distribution. And then this part right here is the vaquita, that core area that they really, really like. So the biosphere reserve that Mexico established in the 90s, they only called for a ban on gill nets in this most northern part at the mouth of the Colorado River. Even though they banned gill nets there, illegal fishing with gill nets still occurred. So later on, it wasn't until about 2005 that Mexico established this vaquita refuge. Now in 2005, they established the refuge but did not ban the gill netting in the refuge. Instead, they tried to compensate fishermen so that they wouldn't fish there. It wasn't until 2008 that they actually banned gill netting in this particular small area. Since then, you look at this big area, this big gill net exclusion zone. Now this covers the entire vaquita range and the vaquita refuge. This wasn't established until April 2015. Mexico finally got on board and decided, yes, we need to ban all the gill netting in this whole area, but they only were going to do it for 2 years, and then they were going to reassess to see how it worked. So in April 2015, they put a ban on gill netting in this area, and they helped pay for that marine mammal survey in 2015 so we can get a count of how many vaquita we were talking about. Now, luckily, as of June this year, they decided to make it a permanent ban, which is great. We just wish it had happened 10 plus years ago. So we hope it's not too late, but even though gill netting is banned, the illegal fishing still happens. So not only do you have gill nets that are active, that have been deployed into the water, there's no buoys on them because they don't want anyone to know they're there. So they're just deployed in the water and they're waiting and they're capturing fish and the vaquita. But you also have old gill nets, we call it derelict fishing gear, that is also sunken in the bottom and it's not being used, but it's still there. So the vaquita get caught in all those different kinds of nets. The Mexican Navy is actually in charge now of enforcing this ban, and they're working with other groups such as Sea Shepherd. You may have heard of them from the whaling, trying to prevent whaling in the Antarctic. They're down here right now trying to pull up those nets and get them out of the water, because that's the main problem. But even though everyone is there trying to do this, the illegal fishing is still happening. So the Mexico government declared an emergency. This has all happened recently, guys. This is very, very recent. They developed this team. It's an international team, Vaquita Conservation, Protection, and Recovery, just VaquitaCPR. So it's an international team of experts that have come together to develop an emergency action plan. And so the Mexican government has decided the vaquita are safer out of their natural habitat in enclosed area nearby. So we're going to remove as many vaquita as we can, put them in these sea pens for their own protection, try to get a breeding program going, try to get the numbers up, and clear out the gill nets, because the whole area, their whole habitat has to be completely free of gill nets before we release them again. So a lot of things have to happen over the next few years. If we're able to capture enough vaquita now, we're hoping that they'll be healthy and we can breed them, and then they'll be released again. So this is kind of the phases we're going through. Find, catch, assess, short-term housing, long-term housing, and then once all the gill nets are cleaned up, illegal fishing is mostly halted, they'll be released. So it's a 4-phase approach. So we're just on phase 1 right now. It just began a few weeks ago in the Gulf of California, where they're going out on boats trying to find the vaquita, which is difficult enough because you saw how hard they are to see, and you need really, really good weather. So they're trying to find them, and then they actually have to capture them, and they have to use nets to do so. Well, the vaquita don't like nets. Even though they get caught in them, it's kind of like they know that's not a good thing. So that is also challenging. But interesting part, we have help. The Navy actually has 4 of their captive dolphins that they're using. They've trained them to locate vaquita, and they're out there helping the researchers keep track of the vaquita. So you'll hear more about that in a little bit. So that's the phase we're on now, and I'm going to show this short, just 2-minute video of the find phase. So you're going to see the boats, you're going to see the observers looking through big eyes, looking for vaquita, and you're going to see them laying out a net that they use to try to capture the vaquita. that gives you an idea what the conditions are like on a good day. The team actually has been really hindered by bad weather. This is a good day, seas are calm. That is not usually the case. And they need really calm seas, not only to detect the vaquita, but to do the really critical capture part of it. They have to have the calm water. So what are they going to do once they capture them? They're going to put them in these floating sea pens right here, which is actually in their environment. They're floating, and this rim here is where is large enough where actually people can walk around it. So they put them in these pens. They're going to try to get them used to human care, which is going to take some time, get them used to feeding from fish provided by humans, and keep sign of their stress levels and their vitals. We're hoping, even though vaquita has never been in captivity, other porpoises have, like the finless porpoise does really well in captivity, and they've been able to breed them. So we're hoping, because they're similar species, that the vaquita will do well. They also have these land-based pools set aside. There's several of them under an enclosure, and this is only to be used if there's bad weather and they need to move them from the sea pens. The phase 2, once phase 1 is successful and they're acclimating to the sea pen, then the plan is to move them to a larger sea pen sanctuary, which would be off of one of the small towns, San Felipe. So what's happened so far? They have successfully captured a vaquita. Here's a picture of it in the sea pen. So you can see the people are here trying to get it used to knowing where the walls of the pen are. It was a calf. They guessed about a 6-month-old calf, and it did have some elevated stress levels, so they released it. They were not willing to keep it. But it was considered a successful capture because this was the first time their plan actually worked. They located it, they were able to capture it, put it in the sea pen, and work with the animal and actually take the vitals from it. So it was considered a success, but as of now, there are no vaquita that are in the pens yet. In October, about the 31st, that was when this article came out. This QR code is for this article about the vaquita disappearing. My graduate advisor is down there, and he wrote that article. He termed ghost porpoise. They had really great conditions. They had a sighting of 3 vaquita. Everything was lining up, and they disappeared. So the people couldn't find them. The dolphins couldn't find them. They were just gone. And this is what they're known to do. And then more recently, as of yesterday, they had a post about 3 more vaquita sightings. Conditions were great, except by the time they sighted them, it was towards the end of the day. So for safety reasons, they weren't going to start this process because it was going to be getting dark soon. So there's hope. They're still optimistic that they're going to capture as many as they can. They only have a couple of weeks left, I believe, and then they may try again in the spring. It's a hugely expensive operation, about $5 million going to this first phase right now. There's lots of resources on the vaquita. I have just touched on the highlights, but there are so many things you can find online. Here's an example. Viva Vaquita is a really great nonprofit that's working with the vaquita and the team. They have brochures. They have coloring book for kids in different languages. All of that can be found using this QR code here. And then I posted the VaquitaCPR QR code right as well, because any update on this effort, they're posting there under latest news. And then, of course, NOAA Fisheries. This is the U.S. regulatory agency that's been working on Vaquita Conservation, and they have lots of information about those surveys because they were in charge of them. So that's all I have for the overview.